Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donoghue here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal, and I'm joined by our Western livestock specialist, Nathan Tuffy, to talk about Mart prices and overall demand in the marts this week. Nathan, you're welcome.
Thanks very much, Patrick.
Nathan, as we heard in our intro clip there, a brisk demand and a brisk selling in Carrigallen alone on Saturday. Prices for calves, demand for calves, usually tapers off this time of the year, but seems to be still going strong. What's driving that?
Yeah, I suppose, look, at this year has been a little bit different to last year in terms of demand for calves. So, early on in the year, we would have seen the exit of Cork Marts from the export game, which kind of set a few ripples through the trade. Farmers were wondering what the trade was going to be like. Strangely enough, there turns out in the end to be very, very strong export demand. A lot of new players stepped into the market this year, which kept a good floor under shipping type calves. Along with that, Patrick, farmer activity for calves has been again very, very strong this year.
For dairy bred or continentals or both, or
everything, dairy bred and continentals. Frisian bull calves, during peak sales would have been running, I'd say, maybe around 90 to 110 euros per head on average for the average type of calf. One thing that's been very notable this year is that the stronger the calf, the more age he has behind him, the more weight he has behind him, the higher the price that he's been getting, and farmers have kind of latched onto that.
Have they held them back a couple of weeks before bringing them to the mart?
Absolutely, yeah. Some fellas have held on to the calves a little bit longer, put a bit more milk into them, and they got well paid for that this year. In terms of buyers, there are a lot of farmers around the country still buying Frisian calves, not just your average Frisian calf. They're buying calves at 130 to 150 and up to 180 euros per head, which may seem like a very high price, but that's what they're willing to pay, I suppose.
Where's the return? Like, we know the shipper is obviously the shipper. They're going out of the country. They're going to Spain and Denmark, and the Netherlands in particular. Yeah. But where's the return of that for a farmer spending up on €200 for a Frisian bull calf?
Well, I suppose if we go back to we in the Farmers Journal ran the Dairy Calf to Beef programme a couple of years ago, and one thing that we did see was that the farmers that were paying that little bit extra for the calf, buying a better quality calf day one, were receiving higher kill-out weights and higher margin at the end. Now, back that time, we were talking about maybe 30 or 40 euros per head over the average. If you're talking about paying 180 euros per calf, you're talking about paying the price of an Angus calf for a Frisian, which the financials of that are questionable by times. The margin is very small. You need a very high throughput to be able to bring a sustainable margin. You would need to have a very good quality calf, Patrick, of a Frisian calf to be able to justify paying up to 180 euros for that calf. But then again, if the calf is near weaned, then it's a different ball game. It costs nearly 100 euros, or the guts of 100 euros, to bring that calf to weaning. So if you were buying a calf at 130 euros, that calf is costing you 230 euros, 6-8 weeks later. And
put it back on maybe on the farmer side. Are you surprised, or should we be seeing more of dairy farmers using the beef crossbreds? Because when you see Belgian Blues from the dairy herd or Angus from the dairy herd bulls doing anywhere from 200 to 400 euro, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Now, from a dairy point of view, if you have a good quality Limousin calf or a good quality continental calf out of a Frisian cow, it does knock a lot out of the cow. So an awful lot of farmers are continuing to use the Anguses and the Herefords. Angus calf prices have seen a fair drop this year compared to last year. At the moment, you can buy an Angus heifer for probably around 150 to 180 euros. A bull calf maybe from 160 to 200.
Is that because there's just more Angus on the beef herd in general? There's
more of them, but one thing that Mart managers are saying right around the country is that the quality of Anguses on offer is slightly less this year than what they would have seen last year. Now, that could be down to a couple of things. That could be down to more Kiwi Frisian influence in the dairy herd, more Jersey breeding in the dairy herd, and it could be just a selection of poor quality Angus bulls, for breeding, which I suppose a dairy farmer that's tailing off the end of the year and putting in Anguses, he's looking for easy calving, number one. He's not looking for very high quality, very well muscled, very good beef index or anything like that generally, and that's something that farmers that are buying have to look out for too. But one thing that you're seeing more and more of is that farmers that are kind of going down the line of buying calves for further finishing, to rear through to finishing. What they're doing in a lot of cases is they're trying to select either the very tops at the marts, or else they're trying to select at farm level, so they know where the calves are coming from. And they know the background breeding, I suppose, of the calves.
And casting the net out a bit wider than that, you had some excellent analysis in last week on your Mart Watch data about comparing prices for the start of the year this year compared to last year. Your own Mart report from Bala at the weekend, Tommy Moyles in Bandon and Skibbereen. Demand for stores, for weanlings. Are farmers think that there's going to be no grass in a couple of months? Like, it seems to be quite mad, the prices that are being paid at the minute.
I look at this time of year, everything is always mad, and I suppose at the moment, if you talk to anybody that's buying cattle, the one thing that they will say is that prices are mad, full stop. In terms of prices, we are very, very strong at the moment. Forward store cattle, Patrick, I suppose in the last 2 months have been a rob, but that's generally driven by a lot more.
A rob for the buyers, says you.
Exactly, for the buyer, not for the seller.
Yeah.
If any farmer that's getting a good price for a forward animal, fair play to them. That's all they want. They need to turn a margin. But I suppose with cattle prices even as high as they are, Patrick, there's not an awful lot in it. The cake is very small. You should divide it between the primary producer and the finisher, and there's not an awful lot left. But in terms of that demand for very forward stores, that has been exceptionally strong. I think one thing that has kind of come to light in the last 6 weeks, 2 months, is that some of the factories might have looked at and analysed the cattle numbers that were out there. The kill fell off a little bit, and I suppose they saw that they were going to get a little bit tighter for cattle. So you saw some of the larger players in the finishing market coming out strongly. A little bit later in the year than you would normally see, because normally they try and buy them a little bit earlier, not to be competing with grass buyers. But they did come out and they bought good quality cattle and bought in numbers, and that has really kept the price of forward cattle up. General store cattle, look at 400 to 500 kilos. They're a solid trade. There's nothing. You're
talking 225 a kilo, that type of thing.
At least, yeah, if not 240. Depending on the type of animal. There's loads of farmers out there. It's grass time of year. Like it's always driven by the grass buyer this time. And I suppose the ANC stocking rate rules would be forcing fellas out to source stock before at the end of May at least, if they have housing for next.
And finally, Nathan, more than the good weather continuing, can you any foresight on where prices are going to be and where throughput is? Are the numbers tailing off?
Yeah.
Is the numbers continuing, or where do you see prices going in the next 2 to 3 weeks?
Talking to marts around the country, the one thing that is evident is numbers came out. It was a little bit slow in January and February, but when the main trade came on us, there was good prices and a lot of cattle came out very quickly. In the last couple of weeks, or in the last week or two, we've seen numbers start to tail off. And if you go to any mart, any of your local marts at the moment, you can see that there's not as much of a selection as there would have been 2 weeks ago. And that's one thing that's actually helping the market again. Generally, at this stage of the year where you're tailing off, you're getting a lot more plainer quality cattle, and the price is holding very well for them, considering that it's the numbers that are dropping that's keeping them up.
Thanks, Nathan. You have more on your Mart Watch data in this week's Farmers Journal and on farmersjournal.ie.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday.
Joined now by my colleague Thomas Hubert, who last week on farmersjournal.ie revealed a government proposal to ban splash plates on slurry tanks. Thomas, you're welcome.
Hi, Patrick.
Thomas, interesting story, very interesting story, when you take into account the vast majority of slurry tanks and slurry spreaders in this country use the traditional splash plate. You have more on the story in this week's print edition. How did this come about? Just give us the background to it.
It all comes from a public consultation the government conducted until last week on air pollution. They call it the Clean Air Strategy. So it's just to prepare future legislation and policy on reducing air pollutants to improve people's health and the general environment. And in that proposal, there's a large section on agriculture, including slurry spreading, because of ammonia emissions. Ammonia, this pungent gas you can smell, comes out of slurry when it's spread, especially when it's broadcast with a splash plate. And so the conclusion from the government is that we should look into banning splash plates. It's not set in stone. It's a consultation, inviting comments and all that, but that's definitely in the proposals.
And we'll talk about the consultation as a whole wider on. But Is this just splash plates, or are there any other farming practices under threat from this proposal?
Well, anything to do with slurry, really. So splash plates are supposed to be the most pollutant in terms of ammonia, but there's also gas escaping from slurry tanks if they're open storage areas or even through slats. And that's mentioned in the document as well, not in such strong language as splash plates, but also discussed and also going to be examined in the coming years, definitely. And a bit of discussion on burning as well, not from ammonia, but from the point of view of fine particulate matter, so dust that soot can get in people's lungs.
Are there not any other ways yet, another set of regulations and restrictions on farmers? Is this just bureaucracy gone mad, more red tape for farmers to deal with, Thomas?
So the reality, and from talking to Teagasc researchers about that, is that 98% of Irish ammonia emissions come from agriculture, so the sector will have to do something about it. Now, it's not necessarily going to be a ban on all splash plates, and there are other areas that also could help. For example, protected urea, using inhibitors on urea to stop the release from ammonia from that way of fertilizing the ground. So there are various options being discussed, and not all being restrictions or bureaucracy, as you said.
Farmers, how are they being represented in this? Who's making submissions? Has any of the farmer organisations made submissions?
The IFA did. They gave me a copy, and it is contesting the idea of banning all splash plates. It's saying they will need to be used. You can't use a trailing shoe in every field in Ireland. Some of them are just too hard to drive around with those machines. So it will have to be part of the solution to keep splash plates for part of spreading. Teagasc researchers sort of agree with that, so maybe some middle ground can be found, and definitely some more lobbying will happen on this.
What happens next?
This is a consultation, as I said earlier, so submissions will be examined by the government. There will be some work done at Teagasc level to quantify the cost of this, and we will be reporting on that, and there will be more lobbying and more coverage in the Farmers Journal.
Finally, Thomas, any other practice like this across Europe that we know of, any other countries that this type of thing is happening in?
There is an idea in the Netherlands, for example, to capture the gas released from slurry tanks through slats. They have traps that they put under the slats to capture the gas. Some ideas that could be imported there. I know the protected urea has been looked into in other countries. Actually, France, where I'm from, is considering a ban on urea altogether. So various options being considered around Europe, but Europe is where it's happening. There is a target by 2030, just like greenhouse gas emissions, to cut emissions of ammonia and other pollutants. So that's going to be a Europe-wide effort.
Fantastic, Thomas. No doubt we'll be revisiting this in the future, and you have more in this week's Irish Farmers Journal and on farmersjournal.ie.
Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal weekly podcast.
This month, Glanbia's shareholders will vote on the Co-op's proposal to regain control of all of its Irish-based operations. My colleague Odile Evans was at an ICMSA meeting in County Wicklow this week, and she asked farmers how they approached the vote.
Hi, so the 11th here at the ICMSA meeting in Wicklow. I'm here with John Hemp. You're a dairy farmer, obviously shareholding in Glanbia, and you're also making your own cheese. What are you going to go to the vote, or what's your thought on it?
I think it's a big decision for dairy farmers to take, but I suppose they're taking their own business back into their hands. Personally, because I'm using my own milk, I suppose I'm not as affected as most dairy farmers, but if I were supplying Glanbia, and I would definitely go to the meeting, I definitely vote, I definitely make my views felt, because it's my business and it's my future.
And do you think it's a risk taking on the agribusiness?
I don't think there is a huge risk taken on the agribusiness, because if you're a shareholder and you're involved in a business and you own the business and the business is part of your business, I think you should be dealing, you should be buying your inputs from the agribusiness. Simple as, if they're buying your milk, you should be buying their inputs. I think it's just the idea of the cooperative ethos is to work together. I'd be all on for that, but you do need to be getting value for money, obviously, and that is an important factor as well.
Yeah. So the chair and secretary of Wicklow ICMSA, Brian and Shane, what's your thoughts on the vote? Are you going, first of all?
We didn't get the consent on this now, did we?
I say up for this. Okay,
I think we will go to it because it's a good day out and it's always good information to be learned from any Glanbia functions like this, we can learn more about the co-op. The deal itself, I think in theory is good, that the power or the running of the co-op should return back to those who should benefit from it the most, the farmers. So from that point of view, yeah, it's probably a positive move in the long run.
Okay.
Although I do have personal reservations about Glanbia agribusiness.
What's your thoughts on it?
I'm broadly positive, but I wouldn't like to see our shareholding in PLC going below any more than 30%. I think that's enough to give up. We had 54% not so long ago. Now we're down to 30%. So 1/3 is enough for me. That's a good business. Why keep selling it away? But I'm broadly positive. We'll probably offer it. Agribusiness, I want to tidy itself up a bit. Other than that, should probably go ahead.
And that was probably one of the points that was raised at the meeting here as well about the pensions. Like, what sort of pension, fold are we going to be taking on if the farmers decide to go with this proposal, because the agribusiness presumably has a lot of them. Do you think that's a fair point?
Well, it is a fair point. What said tonight was 1,800 employees, so there's going to be a liability. There'll always be a liability. I presume we get more information next week at Ashdown Park meeting. It's something's going to have to be dealt with. The full figures will have to be laid on the table.
So John Murphy's here at the Wicklow ICMSA meeting as well. And John, like, what are you hearing in reaction in terms of the vote in Glanbia?
Yeah, no, the reaction is positive. We've had a round of meetings in all the regions at this stage, and we've had no real negative. There's nobody really against this proposal. It makes perfect sense at this time. We're going to have a 1.5 billion agri-food business controlled by farmers, increasing to a 2 billion business in the next 3 years. Along with that, we also have close to a 2 billion investment in the PLC, making us the wealthiest co-op in Europe. So I think we're in a very strong position, the farmers at Glanbia going forward. And plus, of course, we have a 100 million spin out, which is always welcome.
Yeah, definitely welcome for farmers anyway. Do you think there might be an issue with farmers getting complacent on this? I mean, everyone thinks it's going to be passed. Are they going to show up to the actual vote itself?
Yeah, that's it. That is an issue. So, we encourage everybody to come along, because I think it gives, actually puts pressure on the board and on management to deliver. If we have a strong mandate, farmers want this to work. They want to see Glanbia Ireland working for the benefit of farmers, and it'll be a success if it works for farmers. It has to work for farmers. It's important that farmers come out and support this and send a strong mandate to the management and the board that this has to deliver. So it's important we get a big crowd out.
Mm-hmm. And there was a few small concerns, raised here tonight, just different farmers with different opinions on things. One of the questions that was asked was, with the co-op taking on the agribusiness, will that be an issue in terms of taking on the pensions as well?
The pensions is an issue, but the pensions have been paid from consumer foods and from agri for the last 5, 10, 15 years. Yes, there is a pension deficit, but there is a plan in place that this will be up to date and where it should be by 2023. And there's also inbuilt that the PLC have to come up with 7.5 million if we fall behind. So look, this is not a new cost to the business. This is a business. This is the cost the business is always borne. And
so will the co-op bear that cost, or the PLC, or who's going to bear it going forward?
Glanbia Ireland will bear the cost going forward.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Now, are Irish farmers competitive? Teagasc economist Dr. Fiona Thorne has just compiled a report comparing the numbers from Irish farms with those from other countries, and she came up with a contrasted result. She spoke with Irish Farmers Journal news correspondent Amy Ford.
Dr. Fiona Thorne, Teagasc economist, here at the report on the competitiveness of Irish agriculture. And Fiona, what are the main take-home points for each of the sectors out of this? What does it show?
Okay, so we'll start off with the dairy sector, and what we're seeing for the latter years for the Irish dairy sector is that we're seeing increases in economies of scale taking an effect. We're seeing total economic costs of production being competitive for the Irish dairy sector, both in an EU context and, more importantly, I suppose, in the international context. So that's a positive news story there on the dairy side. Then the next sector that we look at is the cereal side. We're looking at Ireland against our key counterparts within the EU, and what we see there is that cash costs of production that a farmer faces has been relatively low compared to countries such as the Netherlands, the UK, France and Germany. But when we look at total economic costs of production, the positive news story is not as positive when we want to remunerate owned land labour labour and capital. Then moving on to our dry stock sectors, looking at beef and sheep. Unfortunately, it's not a positive news story that we're looking at there. Looking at cash costs of production as a percentage of market-based output. So these farmers are supposed to view the single farm payment as being decoupled from production, and when we express costs as a percentage of market-based output, which is a key indicator of competitive performance, we see not a positive news story either within the EU or, I suppose, more importantly at the moment in the international context. And that's especially important as we're entering into the Brexit negotiations. We're looking at Irish beef entering into the UK market, being more exposed in a potentially WTO scenario, looking at WTO tariffs being applied. And the results from today's report is showing that beef costs of production being well in excess of other countries such as Argentina and Brazil, which will be able to produce beef at a lower cost of production into the UK market than we could ever even dream about.
Okay, thanks a million. Okay.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday.
County Cork farmer Dennis Keohane is the new chairman of the National Ploughing Association. Our West Cork correspondent Tommy Moyles met him in Clonakilty.
First of all, congratulations on your new role. How long are you involved in the NPA?
I'm involved in the NPA with 20 years now. I'm the director here in West Cork, from Far West Cork, with the past 20 years, but I'm involved in ploughing with about 50 years almost, since I was in Mart in Ballinascarthy. Someone asked me one night if he'd proposed that we'd have a ploughing match, and this was at the end of the 60s. It started from there, and I was secretary a couple of times in the county and things, and I was elected 20 years ago to this job, and I've been working. I was on the executive for a year somewhere along, but I've been vice chairman with the last 3 years.
Yeah. So you've plenty experience built up anyway.
Well, I hope that the experience I have built up over that time will carry me through the next 1 year or 3 years, whatever this may be.
So what are the main issues that are ahead for the NPA?
I suppose the main issues that are ahead is that if it keeps growing like it is, our land base for whole data, our area base will get tighter and tighter.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Finally, our circulation manager, Jamie Leonard, visited County Leash shopkeeper Maud Dunn last week. Maud has been selling the Irish Farmers Journal for more than 60 years. You can read more about her in this week's Irish Country Living and watch a video of our visit to her shop at farmersjournal.tv. First, let's hear a few words from her before we go.
How many years are you selling the journal?
I was 1955, 56 or around that.
Wow. Where are you going? 7 years? More, that's true, 1948. That's really long. So tell me this, Maud, has much changed in the last 55 years?
Oh, a lot of big change. Big change, yeah. But very quiet, of course, though. Supermarkets and everything, you couldn't compete with them.
Yes.
You know.
That's the big shift.
But
the bigger
I have enough to do.
90. Wow, congratulations.
Thank God.
You had a big family around you as well?
Well, the other families, thank God, they're all more or less around, yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, too bad, sorry. They're very good, they look after me.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.